Welcome to my teaching learning session. Today we start with BPCS 185, a new unit with me, Sonal Singh Pawar, which is developing emotional competence. Block 1, we are going to introduce the emotional competence, know about what is emotional intelligence as a concept, and Unit 1 will talk about completely what is emotion. What is emotion? What is its characteristics and nature? The components of emotion, the types of emotion that we should characterize, and even that is emotion related to thinking, feeling, and behavior. So, our emotions actually related to how you think and how you behave, and that's going to lead to the sum up of the unit. Let's start. What are emotions? Emotion comes from the word called emotion is motion, like which is feelings on motion. So emotions has that strength to make you move, to make you do something. It does have that motivation and equally the push. That's why it's called motion. The feelings that make you move, and that only happens when there's a strength, there's a drive, there is this trigger to make you move from one stance to the other stance, and also makes changing in your initial state that can lead to triggering in the later stages. Also, we need to know that emotions are reactions most of the time. Reactions as like in response to whatever that you experience. So for example, if you see a color which is red, or see a color which is black, see a color which is blue, a beautiful blue, the reaction that you give out also a lot of times state us and define us as it is being emotion. So the type of emotion a person experiences determined by the circumstances that trigger the emotion. So at most of the time it happens that the emotions are triggered by whatever kind of situation you are in. For example, if you're in a situation that is very rushing, if a situation is very calm, if a situation is very serene, so the kind of trigger is embedded in the situation that we are a part of. For example, a person experiences joy when receives a good news, and at the same time is threatened when they encounter fear. So where is it all starting from? The triggering situations are coming from the situation. The triggering factors that is leading to that feeling called emotion is coming from the situation. So being aware of our internal emotional state and being more mindful and present with how our body and mind responds to a situation is also stated to being able to manage your stress better. So if we are aware what we are feeling inside, if we know that this is something that we are recognizing inside, and this is more mindful and are present with how our mind and body responds to, enables us to manage stress far better than we can imagine. So this was stated by Annie Miller. Also, emotions can be desirable, it can be undesirable to an individual depending on whether it is an individual difference that we should be seeing. There are times that I see a place which is desirable for me, and there's another person who might see the same place and it's going to be undesirable for them. So there are individual differences, remember. And also, it's whether said the event is perceived as positive or negative, or performs an adaptive function for the individual. So remember, what we are trying to say with this definition is that the emotion is experienced at times to be desirable and undesirable according to how you perceive it. If you perceive it to be positive, so I'm sure the positive emotions are going to come out. It's going to be happiness, it's going to be excitement, the positive apprehension that we hold. And if it's perceived already negative, remember, it could be anger, it could be fear, it could be sadness. So the perception that we hold, the appraisal that we do, of that situation to be positive, negative, at times makes it positive, negative, makes us perceive the kind of emotion that will come out. And if a emotion is of adaptive value, the individual will accordingly perceive it. So if it's of an adaptive function, remember, emotions are going to perceive it accordingly. Then let's start with the characteristic and nature of emotion. So, at times we always felt that emotion is just a feeling, and rather it's very different. It's not similar. You don't say that emotion is similar to mood, you don't say emotion is similar to feeling. It's all an umbrella term. Emotion is an umbrella term which holds both of the two together. So, speaking of the nature and characteristic, emotions are very complex, and they are very loosely connected. That means they are very fragmentedly, not very enmeshly connected to the events that begins with the stimulus, and includes feelings, it includes psychological thought process, the body impulses, and a specific goal directed behavior. So Plutchik has stated this, that emotions are very complex chain, and they're not very strongly connected. At times our emotions are broken down in the middle. Let's see, today's time, we are feeling happy about something and we just receive one, I would not say a bad thought, but during that process of happiness which receives one doubt, and that will completely change that note of emotion. So it's very loosely connected, it's not very strongly connected. You cannot say that if you have started with happiness, you will end with happiness, because it's a complex set of psychological changes, feelings, a lot of reflexive actions, and which also leads to your goal directed behavior. Whatever that you need to achieve has been stated by Plutchik in 2001. Also, Woodward stated that emotion is a stirred up feeling. It is indeed. We do feel that changes, physiologically and biologically. In the mind, there's flight of actions, the body is so triggered, we feel so charged, our mind is all, flight of ideas, so many thought process, and the changes are coming in our behavior. So it is a stirred up process for an organism that appears that feelings of the individual himself as a disturbed muscular and a granular activity as an external observer, which is true. At times, when we are happy or when we are sad, it looks very odd to the external environment, which is people who are watching us might not find it very right. They find it as a disturbed state. They feel that the equilibrium of the individual is disturbed. So that is something which was stated as granular activity to an external observer. Now, understanding, let's start with characteristics. Emotions are experienced in response to a particular kind of situation. Um, Very, very important point we should always remember: emotions do not come automatically. You do not get triggered. If emotional reactions are without any trigger, remember that is obviously a psychological concern. It could be an unsolved concern of the past, but emotion is always experienced as a response to an internal or a particular external event. So a response of this kind involves physical arousal, like bodily changes, heart rate increases, your blood pressure, there is a lot of sweating, perspiration, there's palpitation, there is release of hormones, etc. That's one characteristic. Secondly, main point of emotions that we should know is a motivation to take action is activated seeking things, activities that provide us pleasure, avoiding those that give rise to pain and pleasantness, which is very true. This is human nature. We always would like to do things that provide us pleasure. Always do seek things that will provide us some sort of happiness. That's why we are motivated to take actions. That's the reason emotion always has a prerequisite. We will always start with motivation to do things, and that motivation is usually because after doing and experiencing an emotion we get satisfaction. This is not only for good emotions, it's also for bad emotion. When you're feeling really sad, you want to vent out, you cry. You feeling sad, so remember, we do receive pleasure in venting out, we do receive pleasure in weeping at times when the situations are very bad. So we want to avoid the pain and the unpleasantness, and that's the reason we seek something which is a pleasure. And this seeking is why, because we are triggered. The motivation is there. We will always start with motivation when we are talking about emotion. Thirdly, emotion arise of our sensation, perception, and thought related to the object situation that we are confronted to, which is very true. If you've perceived somebody already to be pleasant, already to be bad, already to be unwanted, remember your emotions are already set for that person. So before you get connected to them physically somewhere, remember you would know that I probably don't like this person, and the kind of emotions that will outflow is actually related to the person that you're meeting. At times, places that we don't like, we don't want to go to such places, and if we are taken to, we know that the kind of emotion that are already triggered. So remember, emotion do arise because of our sensation, perception, or thought about a specific person, situation, and object. So it depends on how we perceive something. So if you perceive something to be good, your emotions are going to be good. You already have a sensation of something being really nice and kind to you. You are going to think and interpret it that way. And that interpretation is actually dependent on the situation. And that's how emotions are dependent on how we think, we feel about specific people, person, places, and objects. Similarly, fourthly, we should know that emotion vary in intensity. You will not experience the same kind of emotion all the time. Happiness can be at times experienced as an euphoric state. At times, happiness can be experienced as a very pleasant and a subtle undertone of feeling happy, and on a lower continuum. And at times it could be very thrilled and very excited. So is for sadness. When we talk about, at times, when you're feeling sad, it could be weeping, venting out, outrageously. And on the lower undertone, it could be you just embracing the entire situation, trying to analyze the context, feeling not feeling good, just relaxing in your mind, etc. Then, speaking of this, these are some basic emotions that we should know. There are joy, trust, fear, surprise, sadness, disgust, anger, and anticipation. So these are eight basic emotions that we had that will always, mostly remains the same across the globe, and we should all acknowledge these six. Understanding that we talk about that emotion as a characteristic and some features, we need to know that emotions are not similar to two major things, as we said. It is not similar to feeling and it's not similar to mood. Emotion is an umbrella term, as I said. It's the bigger value thing, and all of this happen. So it's not the same. Feelings and emotions are not the same, even though we might use it the same. Like for example, you're experiencing an emotion called sadness, and you say, "I feel really low today." So you are using the same term, but they're not the same. They are interchangeably used, but they don't mean the same. So the term feeling refers to a person's private and emotional experience, a self perception of a specific emotion, like a specific situation that they don't like or the specific situation that they love extremely would be feeling. So when an event occurs, one person responds automatically at a physical level, even without awareness, which is emotion, and then registers, evaluates this feeling. So remember, feeling happens when we start evaluating the situation, perceiving the situation, that how this situation is. Do I need to like it? Is it of my likability? Or is it something that I should not go with? Whereas emotion happens automatically to us because our body is triggered to move in that direction. Similarly, the concept of mood is also different. While emotion lasts for a period of time and arises to a particular situation, and moods are of lower intensity, they don't stay for longer. You will generally see that their lower intensity lasts for longer periods, even days, and may not necessarily be associated to an immediate event. So moods are something like I'm being in a bad mood. I'm sure a lot of you might have heard this. I'm being in a good mood these days, don't spoil it. I'm being in a bad mood, the days are not good. Remember, they are of lower intensity. Like emotions are big, they flash up, they happen, the trigger happened because of a situation. Whereas feeling is evaluation, mood persists. So mood is something, I am not been experiencing a great time these days, so don't bother me. People say that. Remember, it's of a lower undertone, but it prevails for a longer time. It's persistent. So while emotions are very direct, it happens, it gets completed, you experience it, and it happens. So like anger, frustration, venting out at a go, physical hormone changes that we see in our body. That's emotion. And moods at times can arise for no reason. We have seen people not feeling good for longer duration, like a day or 2 day, and they don't know. You ask them, how are you feeling? They just said, I have a bad mood. They cannot explain it. Some people are elated and not happy. You ask them, what's going on? Is it something good that you need to tell us? They say, no, I'm just in a good mood. So there is no apparent cause of mood. So that's something that actually differentiates between the mood, emotion, and feeling. Now let's talk about what are the functions of emotion. Does emotion really matter? Do we need them? And if we need them, for what purpose? Are there any purposes that they are needed for? They are actually needed. They're needed for interpersonal functions. They're needed for intrapersonal functions. Speaking of intra is something which is within. Intrapersonal is something that we talk about within ourselves. So these are functions that that emotion serves within an individual, help guiding behavior, telling them what to do next, and helps them for survival, telling them to regulate their emotions. So that's intrapersonal. When we talk about interpersonal functions, these functions are performed by emotions between individuals. So this is about expressing, generating, indicating signals about others of how you feel. So, for example, if someone has been very welcoming to you, your emotions are going to be accordingly. So that's not intra, that's inter. For example, received a great grading and you are thinking about it, what to do next, analyzing, helping those grades guide your behavior. That's intra. So, did you see? Intra is about using that emotion for your own self to guide your behavior, to make decisions, to have a survival value in the society. Whereas interpersonal is, the characteristic of emotion that it is triggered by situation, people, and object. So it's in relationship when we interact with other people. So it's an indication that what others might feel about you. Then it is also having functions like social and cultural function. This dimension has to do with how emotion contributes to the construction and maintenance of your social gathering, your cultures, your cultural groups. So emotion is stated as, the trust often act as a glue. So emotion also is like that. Emotion acts like a glue in the group, and it keeps people together. The fact that there are festivities coming, people actually reunite because of the common emotional content and the emotional intensity that they hold as being a part of that social group or as being a part of that distinct cultural group. So remember, people evolve in their own distinct culture. They have their own societies that they form on the basis of this emotion. And on their part, cultural code inform individuals and groups about the specific rules and display of behavior that they should do. What is correct in their category of culture? What is correct in their social group? What do they need to express and what not? So remember, social and cultural functions are even regulating. They're equally telling you what you should be doing in the group and what you should not be doing. This can happen by role modeling. This could happen by the strength of bond that we've held with people. Now let's come to components of emotion. There are quite a many. We have components like affective, cognitive, physiological, motivational. So let's talk about the four component. Let's see a situation happening. Like, imagine a situation happening. You see someone receive a great news, and you let's take an example. The great news that the person receives, the first function that we see in the person, the component, the change is physiological. There are body reaction. The person who's received a huge great news will be sweating, will be trembling a little, and there would be an ecstatic feeling, a little anxiousness. Yes, there is happiness. You will see them in a euphoric state of mood, but at the same time they're anxious, they have trembling feeling, and obviously the body is reacting anxiously. Now, at the same time, you will see affective notes, which is referred to the conscious subjective feeling. Individual monitors their internal states and felt state and recognize what they are feeling. And also cognition. Affective and cognition, what is the difference between the two? Cognition is about, involves describing and assigning the emotion that this is what I'm going through. I'm going through an extremely great time. So thinking about very different from the actual feeling. So this is, I've shifted from feeling okay after I received the news. I was extremely happy. So this is the judgment and the thought process. Cognition is what? Thinking, reasons, problem solving, judging, decision making. So it decides that this emotion is purely happiness. Whereas affective decides that it's an internal feeling. I can express it in front of people, that everyone knows it. So this is a felt state. They recognize, they monitor themselves and understand that this is something, kind of a feeling, which everyone can see in me. So a news which is openly expressed would be affective, where you have the conscious feeling that yes, I am feeling happy. Labeling it as happiness is cognition. Seeing those changes in yourself, like you see those changes physiologically, palpitation, sweating, that anxiety, that euphoric state, that's physiological. And then comes the motivation, what this emotion is making you do. Is it guiding your behavior? Is it telling you that this is the best thing you should be doing? You've got a great news, now you need to use it at your workplace or use it at your house, etc. So remember, the image that we have on top tells us four components. You have a social expression completely. You have a sense of purpose, bodily arousal and feeling. Bodily arousal, physiological. Social expression talks about, the subjective state of mind. Sense of purpose is something which is, your motivation, and the feeling that you have is, feeling is affective. Social expression is cognitive. So social expression, because you're labeling it, you're telling it to the world, you're labeling it as a good thing. So these are major four components that we have, and the last one is expression. Expression talks about, expressing it by the facial features, not the label. But if you've labeled it the happiness, you smile, you laugh, you share with people, you become loud. If you are sad, you sublime, you get into a mold, and don't talk to people. So that's displaying of emotion. This completes with the component. Let's go to them again. It's affective, cognitive, physiological, motivational, and expressive. Now let's come to types of emotion. We just have combination of just two types of emotions that we have, which is primary emotions, and we have something which is called as a secondary emotion. Primary emotions, these were the first two distinction given by later, established by Plutchik also. See, primary emotions are those which are basic and universal. and they're hardwired to us. They just happen automatically. We experience it in all culture and all social contexts. So happiness, sadness is something we might experience in all contexts. Jealousy might be another common one. We experience that jealousy is something which is not a global emotion. We need to know jealousy is a global emotion. Children also experience jealousy automatically. What can be something which is different, which is disgust? So something that doesn't happen to you automatically and organically is not a primary emotion. So Plutchik identified these primary emotion as fear, surprise, sadness, disgust, anger, anticipation, joy, and trust. So these just happen automatically. If it doesn't happen automatically, they tend to be a secondary emotion. So let's take an example. A combination of the primary give rise to more complex emotion. Those are called secondary. So mixture of two. So as I said, if disgust doesn't happen to people automatically, probably culturally they're not hardwired to it. But Plutchik stated that these are those basic emotions, which is fears, happiness, sadness, disgust, anticipation, joy, and trust. So if we combine these, if you tend to, according to Plutchik's model, which was a beautiful model, which is on the top when we see. So see, we have joy, trust, fear, surprise, sadness, disgust, and anger, anticipation. So that's on the on the ring, which is from the center, the second one. So if you combine it, remember, if you combine trust and joy, it's going to give you love. So love could be a complex, emotion, which is secondary. Now, if you combine trust and fear, it gives submission. So if you trust people and you're fearful, you tend to submit to them. If it is fear and surprise, it's awe feeling. If you have sadness and surprise, it's disapproval. And if there is disgust and sadness, it's remorse. And if there is anger and disgust, so you're angry and you disgusted also, it's called contempt. And if it's anticipation and anger, remember, anticipation and anger gives you aggression. It could be physical, it could be verbal. And then we have joy and anticipation, which is optimism. You're anticipating beautiful things, which is being optimistic in life. So this is how, we combine the two and we come down to complex emotions. So according to Plutchik, the combination of these emotions actually leads to secondary emotions, which are far more complex. So, eight basic emotions to be remembered of Plutchik's model, which was this, which is fear, joy, sadness, surprise, disgust, anticipation, trust and joy. So that finishes with this eight that we need to have. Let's move ahead with another concept. When we know what are basic emotions, when we know the types that are primary emotions, and primary emotions are called basic, they happen to us automatically. We need to come down to the factor of relationship between emotions, thinking, and behavior. So when we talk about the two, you need to know that there is a relationship between the two and all of them. You feel something, you think about it, and you tend to behave. So, in general parlance, it's easy to understand that you're thinking about something. That thinking will make you experience something which is an emotion, and that emotion will trigger you because we studied in characteristics. Emotions are triggered by situations. Emotions do have motivation, and they are different in intensity. So, emotion, thinking, and behavior are, it does mention it is intrinsically linked. The relationship between them can be best defined through contemporary models of emotions that we will study ahead. And this process, of assigning meaning to an event, remember our appraisal, the fact that you understand a situation and you tend to assign meaning to it is called appraisal. And cognitive appraisal, therefore, is an evaluation and interpretation of your personal circumstances, meaning of your personal circumstances, which results in emotion. So, in a simple term, according to Nolan and Hoxima et al. In 2009, they are trying to tell you we have a term called appraisal. What is appraisal? Assigning meaning to a situation. So, your cognitive appraisal, which is you being able to think, reason, understand, judge, and evaluate a situation, and then further interpret it, and your emotion comes according to that. Let's go back before. We just understood if we label a situation to be positive, negative, our emotions automatically come like that. So that is a cognitive appraisal. You have evaluated the situation and interpreted it as good. So remember, our cognitive appraisal of the situation actually leads to the kind of emotions that you're going to put out. That's what it results into. So specific appraisals usually give rise to particular emotions, influence their intensity and quality as well. So remember, the kind of appraisal that you make to a situation will influence the way you. So do we understand the way we think about a situation actually, in many folds tells that this is the kind of emotion that you're going to come to, and that emotion will lead to behavior. So how you think, which is cognitive appraisal, will lead to emotion. Emotion is according to the thinking and the labels that you give to a situation, person, and place. And that emotion actually being a motivational component leads to the kind of behavior that you output. So that's actually stated correctly. It is an it's intrinsically labeled link, which is not directly. We cannot link it directly, but if we understand that the triggers are there in terms of cognitive appraisals and situation, will lead to something like behavior. So beautiful image that can help you understand that how situations trigger the thoughts, which leads to emotion. Emotion triggers us, moves us, and leads to behaviors. That finishes with concept one, where we understood what was emotion, what were the types of emotion, and also understood that there are some components of emotion that we should know, which was affective, behavioral, which is physiological, affective, cognitive, expressive, and motivational. And now let's start with another unit, which is unit 2. Speaking of Unit 2, now the unit is going to talk about the historical development and components of emotional intelligence. So, when we understood what is emotions, we now will come to the understanding what is emotional intelligence. We do have an intelligence called EI that is different from intelligence, and it's called emotional intelligence. What emotional intelligence is and is not, we will differentiate that how in the society and world we should understand that what should not be catered as emotional intelligence in day-to-day living. People started using this term also very leisurely. There is a difference in what emotional intelligent and how people smartly use situation differs. We will talk about historical development of emotional intelligence, some components of emotional intelligence, and the relationship between EI and EQ. So we have, we have a quotient for intelligence, which is IQ. We have a quotient for emotions, which is EQ. And we are going to finally talk about the benefits of emotional intelligence today. So let's dive into it. Let's talk about emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence actually in the modern world today talks about that it's a combination of, in the view of modern neuroscience, wherein emotions are framed in a useful data. They tell you about the environment, your emotions intelligently used, talks about how the environment can be utilized without any hindrances, obstacles, and rationally thought over. So emotional intelligence is all about that. And speaking, emotion was derived from a Latin word which was motere, which means to move, and at the same time emotions gets that stirring up feeling. So emotional intelligence was later expanded that along with this stirring up feeling, we have that thought process also, we have that sound judgment, we do have that reasoning in us. So some basic thought process of emotions that we should understand is that emotions are information and present useful data about our world. So EI is something that you hold about your world in, which is information. The data that you have collected through your experiences is something which is emotions. Then the decisions must incorporate emotion in order to be more effective and lead to an intended outcome. So while you're making decisions, you're making judgments, you are thinking about something, they mention emotion must be incorporated. And according to this, in 2012, Schwartz and Reinhardt stated that people in a less positive or even negative mood perceive truthful information more effectively than in a positive mood. So see, if how the state of emotions can change the way you perceive things. So it has been already, labeled and researched by Reinhardt and Schwartz that if people are in negative mood and low positive mood, they tend to take the truthful information more strictly and more effectively than you are in a positive mood. At times you're in a great mood and people tell you, this is something that was spoken about you. They said, okay, I'll manage it. You do not pay heed to it that why such a thing was spoken about me. But if you're not in a good mood, you tend to analyze, rip that information from A to Z. So this is, how emotions, when packed in your thought process, can make a difference. Then we can try to ignore emotion, but it doesn't work. Remember, all our long periods of time, we should know that suppressing and hiding emotion takes up valuable mental energy that could be directed. So having emotions while deciding, while thinking, while labeling and judging is extremely important, else it's going to be very stressful. If you avoid emotions, remember, while deciding on things, remember you are not regulating a bigger part of your life. Then let's define emotionally operational, the operational definition. EI is a set of emotional and social skills that will, you know, that will influence you about the way you perceive things, you express yourself. It develops and also maintains your social relationships. So it will help you cope with challenges, have a survival value, and use this emotional information very effectively and meaningfully. Also, emotional intelligence was defined by Salvo and Mayer in 1990 in a very beautiful definition, that the ability to monitor one's own feelings and others' feelings and emotion, being able to discriminate amongst them, and then use this information to guide your own thinking and action, which is true. In a set of an environment where everyone is feeling happy, and you're able to differentiate that I am feeling happy, and probably the person too has received this information for the first time, they're far more ecstatic and euphoric. So ability to monitor your own emotion, ability to monitor other people's emotion, and being able to discriminate. Once you are able to regulate that this is my feeling and this is other people's feeling, remember you can use that feeling to guide your behavior. And that's the relationship between emotion, feeling, and behavior. So that's the way you feel, the way you think, and the way you emote, which is the way you behave. So, this is something which is emotional intelligence in a nutshell as a definition. Now, let's understand what is emotional intelligence and what it should not be ideally. It's about being aware of yourself, it's about managing yourself, being self aware, what is inside you, and what are your qualities, how do you manage yourself emotionally. Also, being able to manage your interpersonal emotion by using your own emotion. It is a scientific study of, we need to know that emotional intelligence is not something which is a subjective thought process. It's been researched well and it's a scientific study. So being aware, managing emotion, which is regulating, knowing yourself, which is being aware socially also, and interpersonal relationship management is something which is EI. Now let's understand what is not emotional intelligence. What we actually, randomly say in a layman language, which should not be considered emotionally intelligent. One is ignoring and suppressing. Suppression of emotion is a negative way of dealing life. So a lot of people who say, "Na, I'm just managing life by ignoring it and just letting it be." No, that's not how it happens. You need to listen to your thought process, understand it, solve it, and manage so that you become self aware, which is again emotional intelligent. Allowing emotion to dominate your thinking and decision making, that should never be. It is always a nutshell, it's always a package. You are thinking also, you're emoting also, and at the same time you're behaving also. So it should be a combination. Once your feelings, at times when you cry and feeling sad, don't we end up saying wrong and random things to people? That's a bigger example. You allow your feelings to dominate. Then a permanent trait, it's not a permanent trait. Our emotions are never the same. We can feel amazingly great in the morning and sleep down to our bed by night feeling crushing down and probably feeling that we've lost the world. So it's never permanent. An indicator of cognitive and academic intelligence. It is today, academic intelligence. I feel IQ needs the support of EQ because it's just not and grading yourself well today. Today's children and generation requires to be able to express their emotion equally well, and a person's aptitude of interest, or there are people who do not have emotional intelligence. So yes, it is an aptitude and interest. Some people want to get along socially and emotionally. It is an aptitude also. Remember, if you feel that people are going to be born with an emotional intelligence, that doesn't happen. As I said, thinking like intelligence, emotional intelligence in this aptitude, no. It's built with experience. It's built with that social skill. It's probably role model to some people. Some people regulate and learn it by experiences. So it's not something that you're born with. Also, avoidance of conflict. Remember, emotional intelligence is not avoiding conflicts. It's rather confronting and learning from it. EI cannot be the best predictor of life. No, we cannot say that. Yes, EI is very important, but what it is not the best predictor of life. There are people who are not emotionally very stable but doing great in life, probably not because they're avoiding and hiding from it, but because they know themselves well. So we need to differentiate between what emotional intelligence is and what emotional intelligence is not. Now let's move to the historical development of emotional intelligence. It started with Thorndike when Thorndike came with their learning theories, and it comprised. He stated that intelligence is comprising of three distinct domains or classes: abstract, analytical, or verbal, which is something which is purely academic. Then we have mechanical performance and visuospatial, which is second. Hands-on practice performing, it could be visual spatial, it could be mechanical, and last is social. So Thorndike thus expanded on the traditional view of intelligence as purely cognitive, something which is used to understand, used to perform, used to judge, used to solve. So his kind of intelligence in three domains were ideally cognitive. You see that cognition is something which is a hardcore of all these three. Then Howard Gardner came up with the process of multiple intelligence. He stated that we do not intelligence is just not one distinct entity; it's multiple. It could be musical, it could be it could be intrapersonal, it could be visual spatial, it could be bodily kinesthetic. Also, it could be naturalistic, and something which is musical and linguistic. So, eight intelligences was something which came up with Howard Gardner. So, this is how intelligence as a concept started coming in. And we got intelligences like inter and intra, which is having emotions as a component. And then we had bigger chunks of intrapersonal intelligence and interpersonal intelligence, which I mentioned is greatly related to emotional intelligence. So Sternberg stated three kinds of intelligence later in 1985: analytical, creative, and practical intelligence. So this is how, from 1920s to 85, there was so much of involvement of intelligence also, which was getting linked to emotions. Then Salvo and Mayer is credited big time. He has done maximum of his researches on emotional intelligence, right from giving the first definition also. And he is widely credited for using emotional intelligence for the first time in Text and Theories, which was 1990. Now let's come to components of emotional intelligence. Like when we spoke about emotions having concept, does our emotional intelligence also has concepts? Yes, it does. It does have components. Perceiving emotion is the first. So your mere ability to register, recognize emotion of others and yourself is the first component. People with high emotional intelligence are rightly able to perceive what's going wrong around their environment, and some do not perceive it well. So the ones who do not perceive it well, remember, they do not have the component of perceiving emotion. Then we have understanding emotion. So you saw that the situation that I'm watching is probably a clutter. I need to let it be and let it resolve and then pitch it. So if you're understanding that specific concept, remember the information which is coming from that emotion, you are able to understand what can be the behavior after this. So if you perceive it well, you understand it well, you'll obviously your behaviors are going to be further well also. So if you know what to do in terms of behavior, you'll be able to regulate yourself. You know how much I need to do. So when you're able to recognize, perceive, and understand, managing emotion comes easily. One recognizes their emotions quickly, understand their meaning, becomes relatively easier to them to think about the next step regarding how to change them. This applies to the self as well as the other. It's just not about managing your emotion. Emotional intelligence is about you and the others equally. Then being able to use emotion rightly after managing, using the right kind of emotion at the right fix. It's like in lock and key. When you know it's happy mode, what kind of questions you need to put. It's like using your emotions to direct decisions, direct your feelings, using them in a right space. So these are also the components of emotional intelligence that we discussed. Now let's move to 2.6, which is intelligence and emotional intelligence. So is there a relationship between the two? Seemingly, yes, they're not interchangeably used ever. But intelligence usually is the cognitive ability we need to understand. It's the ability to think well, understand well, and reason well, according to Alfred Binet. But in emotional intelligence, it's more social and emotional. It is the feelings. It is a social connection with people that's more interpersonal. So Webster stated that intelligence is a global, capacity, aggregate global capacity for people, for individuals to act purposely, think rationally, and deal with the environment effectively. Emotional intelligence was about recognizing your emotions and other people's. So it's about you knowing your emotion and other people's, discriminating and being able to use it later in life. So let's connect the two. They are different in a greater way, but I feel if we want to function in the life, we might need the EQ and IQ together. We need to have it all there. That's what we perceive in terms of understanding IQ and EQ. So let's understand the components, and we'll understand, we'll be able to fragment it. So if you perceive emotion well, which is understanding what's happening around. Intelligence is about reason well, think well, and understand well. All cognition. There isn't any perception. We are not perceiving any feelings of anyone, neither yours, neither others. Then after we perceive, we need to understand where there, it's a capacity. It's a strength of a person if you have. So it can be academically tested. So if it's a global capacity, remember it can be academically tested. Understanding emotion and then managing emotion might not have the similar kind of academic potential. It cannot be tested in the same way also. When we talk about emotional intelligence, it does not have the same paradigm of testing of the question will have this answer, like intelligence has a question and has to have this answer. It doesn't happen like that. So it's different for them, and the same time using emotion. Intelligence doesn't speak about expression of intelligence. Emotion does speak about expression of emotion. So do we see in the components itself, we are able to differentiate between the two. Now, speaking of intelligence and the relationship, as we come back, let's come to the image. We have defined what is intelligence, and in the beginning, we have defined what is emotional intelligence. Let's understand. IQ is more logistics. It's more logic, it's usability. It's about how you can use it in environment, how can you analyze it, how you can fragment and strategize it, how you can organize it. EQ is not that. EQ is more holistic. EQ is how you see the bigger picture and how do you analyze it, perceive it, probably use it for later too. So it's more design and creation. So let's say two people. You give the same task for the two people to set a room. Remember, a person who is high on IQ might set it very strategically, very analytically, that this is something you need to use today. All the usabilities of Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. When we talk about an EQ person, he's an holistic person, that these are items that needs to be segregated and set as per the household needs. So they're creative, they're very holistic thought. They don't look at one in terms of logic and memory and usability. They know it in terms of intuitiveness, that it could be mixed and matched, used later, utilized. So their awareness go in depth, a little in depth. So now let's fragment the two as per the image. IQ is logic. IQ is memory. There is language in IQ, which is very true. Language is one of the reflection of intellectual quotient. Then we have hyperactivity, which happens to be a part of intelligence quotient that we have, and at the same time we have concentration and comprehension. So this is something which comes to IQ. Then we have EQ. EQ will be, as I said, is going to be holistic. Remember, it's going to be creative. It's going to be more design. It's just not restricting to fixing to the paradigm. It's not an A, B, C, D, E, F. It's not A to Z. It is using your intuition, being very empathetic to the concept. Empathy is what? Let's understand. Intuition is a gut feeling in a very general layman language. Empathy is feeling like the other person, like feeling in their shoe. So, not sympathizing, we are not pitting or showing compassion, but we are understanding the person's feeling by being in their shoes. So, EQ has that ability, whereas IQ has that ability of memory. So, probably speaking to an intelligent person is that they know everything about you, and speaking to an emotionally intelligent person would be they understand and know you inside out about you. So, see the difference between memory and empathy. Then language is there. This language is now utilized in EQ in terms of art, music, creation, something which is a modified version of your language. There is hyperactivity because we all know that intelligence quotients are children with high intelligence quotient tend to be higher in terms of their activity. They quote well, they do well, they perform well, and they need more stimulation. So they need more activity than you feel they would ever require. Then concentration is a big focus. Remember, creativity talks about, when creation, design, and intuition comes in, it talks about self awareness. It talks about knowing yourself in depthly. So EQ would be that their mirrors and their screens inside their life is completely clean. They know themselves inside out that this is something I cannot deal with. So let's just move out. Intelligence quotient, concentration, forcing themselves. My intellect allows me to do this. I gotta be doing this. So see how it is different. IQ is about comprehension, the ability to read well, understand well, comprehend situation from neck to neck. Whereas EQ is about being triggered, being motivated. Emotions are about being triggered. You know, one of the component of motivation, one of the component of emotion was motivation. Affective, cognitive, emotion, physiological, motivation, and expressive. So this is how EQ and IQ are different, but in the mind they all reside. Our minds are functional. The left hemisphere, the right hemisphere, connected by the bridge of corpus callosum, actually makes the two hemispheres function together. The logic and the language. If the logic and language doesn't function, remember, how will your teachers teach you the way you wish to? Without examples, just reading from the books, not giving you examples, not associating your text to the world devices and happenings in the world. So this is what EQ gets it. Whereas IQ will get it, come, solve, finish. Understood? Because you have the comprehension, you have the concentration, and you have the memory. Whereas EQ will help you explain it, use it in the world. That's why psychology is being used in the world. You can apply it to people, you can solve it for people, and you can benefit it for people. So this is the relationship between the two. And we also need to know that there is something which is fluid intelligence and crystallized intelligence. This was a concept which came after Charles Spearman. Fluid intelligence is according, to understand that intelligence is also seen in this pattern. Fluid is something, which is a measure of abilities of information and reasoning and processing. Crystallize, the term crystallize, it's about acquiring, retaining, organizing. It's crystalled. So when we talk about crystal, remember, it's organized, it's intact. Fluid is flowing. So it's the measure of ability, what keeps coming in. You keep processing it, you keep reasoning it. So fluid intelligence is the measure of your ability of information. So that's why, when we talk about fluid and crystallized, and we see it in terms of opposite emotional intelligence does have fluid intelligence, which is we do reason, we do process because we are perceiving situations, but we cannot crystallize. We cannot organize information and retain it the way it is. So if you have had a situation which has been annoying, you cannot label it always annoying. So we cannot crystallize it. So see, intelligence and emotions and intelligence do go hand in hand, but they are seemingly different from one another. So now let's come to the last part that we have. Do we really have benefits of emotional intelligence? So if we are telling children today that you need to be emotionally intelligent, is it of any benefit? See, it's a popular concept from 1990. And steadily it is gaining more more capacity in the society. People are benefiting it not only to understand but also to give it out to people. Give it out in terms of making people learn about it, fetching from it, and utilizing it into day-to-day life. So yes, it does have benefit, allowing individual to tap on their thinking capacity. Emotional intelligence allows you to think beyond, like, not only of what you have as a logic, but to seep it within, that how this logic fits into me and I can use my strength and weaknesses and bring it out best. Also, it gives you a it gives a realistic and a practical view of both situation, emotionally and cognitively. So as per the traditional notion, it is about encouraging using emotions in your decision making, problem solving, but also allowing you to leave that concept of suppression, unhealthy suppression of emotion. So we give a practical view that this is emotions allow you to see things intrapersonally well, how things can be understood, perceived rather than suppressed and put away. Then facilities of understanding self beyond superficial information, which is very true. Emotional intelligence allows you to just go beyond yourself. It enables you to bring in out qualities like empathy. Obviously, empathy is something which is bigger than sympathy, which enhances the quality of interpersonal relationships. We all need to know interpersonal relationship is about understanding others, and the understanding self gets you intrapersonal. So I feel empathy is the key for transforming relationships today in interpersonal, and obviously adds competitive advantage over cognitive ability. You need to know being only intelligent is just thinking, reasoning, problem solving, pure thinking, reasoning, technical logic and memory. But being able to pursue excellence will be, when we graft in something which is emotional intelligence, when we are able to graft in decision making using our emotion, having a realistic view, having a prominent view of both the worlds at the same time. So we need to know emotional intelligence allows not only control over emotions but also more agency. All your senses works in together. You experience a bigger picture of the world and the situation of a given situation. So remember, when we speak about emotional intelligence, it's just not hitting the dart. It's about looking all around the dart and then hitting the dart. So it's about the air, it's about the pressure around this situation and the in the area that you are around. So that completes with knowing that it's just going beyond control and understanding. It's about a perception, sensation, and all your faculties working. This completes with benefits of emotional intelligence and unit 2. And so motivating healthy relationships, providing strengths and empathy for others. This is what you build in with emotional intelligence. Thank you.